Hey guys, Brian here from Better Chess Training, and today I've got a treat for you. Got a chance to catch up with Grandmaster Daniel Gormally. He has a new Chessable course out called Sharp Middlegames 2, and so I invited him to come talk about it a little bit. But we cover a bunch of topics, including the candidates tournament, chess improvement. He shows me an instructive game of his, and a bunch of other topics that I think you'll find entertaining as well as educational. Okay, off to the interview.
With that, we're going to talk about a couple things. The reason that kind of sparked our conversation is that I own a couple of Danny's courses. One called Sharp Middlegames on Chessable, and I'll put a link down to that. I enjoyed that very much. It was very complicated and sharp, and it helped to sharpen my play, I think. Of course, it always needs to be revisited, but came out with a new course. I think you actually wrote it a couple of years ago, but it finally came out on Chessable, Sharp Middlegames 2. So, Danny, why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, I think it's a much better course, to be honest with you, Brian. I cover like a lot more subjects. And I talk really about subjects that interest me, specifically to do with chess theory. So, for example, I talk about space. I also talk about specifically when you have, sometimes as black, you have your knight on e4. And I also talk about concepts like time. And I explain why time is important in chess, and things like space and why amateur players struggle. So I think one of the reasons why I think it's a much better course is because I'm thinking much more through the way an amateur player would think. And I also use games from Chessable users to kind of explain the kind of mistakes that they're making and how they could get better, how they could improve. So I feel like that's why it kind of stands out really as a course. Mm-hmm. And it just gives a lot of very good general advice using my chess career, and also using Super Grandmaster games. Although the course is called Age of Computers or whatever it's called, it's not really about computers. There is a chapter in there about computers, but I think some people might find that a bit off-putting that you're talking about computers. But I do talk about computers. I talk about the pluses and cons of using computers, right? How it can be a minus if you use computers because you switch your brain off.
Yeah, and we've talked about that before. One thing I found interesting about it is I had to revisit it a little bit because I kind of do it and then I don't do it for a while and then I revisit it. So one of the things you write about, you took some material from some of the banter blitzes, especially from Magnus Carlsen's banter blitzes, and you put kind of your thoughts and then you would include some of his thoughts. And why do you think that's helpful for amateur players?
Well, I just think that it's a unique opportunity now because if you go back to the times of Bobby Fischer, Tigran Petrosian, Mikhail Tal, Botvinnik and so on, even Karpov Kasparov, you didn't really have many videos on those guys. Whereas now you've got people like Nakamura streaming full time.
Yeah,
Magnus is occasionally popping up. It's a unique opportunity to see inside. It's actually helpful for me as well. It's really helpful for me because the way they see chess. So I thought that was really essential to include that in the course for that reason.
Yeah, no, I thought it was very interesting. Even if it's interesting because some people might say, well, these are just blitz games. Because most, I believe, the ones that you included were blitz games. But the quality, I mean, I guess you could use a chess engine and say, oh, well, he only got like the third best move here or just he didn't get the very best move. But it's not really about necessarily the top engine move, but it was about how he thought about the position. Is that kind of what you were getting at?
Exactly, because I'm trying to break down the thought process. I mean, there's an interesting recent book that came out by Michael Adams and joint author with Philip Hurtado, and it's called Think Like a Super GM. So I'm trying to think from that mindset, and I'm trying to explain, what is the difference? Why is certain players GMs? Why are certain players super GMs? Why can't GMs get to be super GMs? Why can't amateur players get to be GMs? What is the things that, what do amateur players do wrong? They do things like they're impatient. They play too quickly. Mm-hmm. I talk a lot about, things like that. They don't really think strategically. they make lots of standard mistakes, like they move a piece more than once in the opening. So I talk about stuff like that. And hopefully that's informative. And I tried it because I didn't get a lot of criticism for that first course. It was too hard. And obviously the problem with middle games, Brian, as you well know, is well, chess in general, is that it is a hard game. You know, you can't run away from that. But all the variations and all the ideas in the video, I try to explain in the video in a way that everybody can understand.
Okay.
Of any
yeah. Well, and I found that in my from reviewing it again, and when I first worked on the course with you. By the way, I beta tested for the audience. I beta tested this course, so I kind of helped find any mistakes and things like that. You might not remember that. That's how. That's why I was so surprised when I saw it. But so it takes a while sometimes, just a little insight, right? Sometimes from the time you create the course to the time that it's for sale for the public can be. I don't know exactly all the reasons, but it could be a while, right?
Well, there were a lot of issues with COVID because I originally intended to publish it in about, I think, 2020.
Right.
I intended to record it in 2020, but couldn't travel over to Netherlands because of COVID.
Oh, okay.
And then 2021 was pretty much a write-off as well. So it was only this year. And unfortunately, it's probably been released a little bit late because it hasn't cashed in on the pandemic boom. Yeah. And I think the chess sales overall have been dropping a little bit because, you know, you obviously had a huge high with the pandemic and the Queen's Gambit and everything else.
Right.
And then suddenly there's been a bit drop-off effect as well. So it's a shame I didn't publish it 2 years ago. So I think the sales would have been. But hopefully this video, this YouTube interview will boost the sales. Buy my video. I'll do like one of these.
Well, and you know what, guys?
Buy my video.
I can. You know what? I found the annotations. I think just to give my plug, and I will be doing sort of a separate review of the course without Danny here, just so I could. So everyone knows I can be objective about it. But I think it's a great course. What I liked about it, and I have a couple of your books. You have a book. I forget. It was called something like Secrets of Grandmaster Calculation or something. You analyzed a bunch of Kasparov games. It's an old book, very old book.
Like Grandmaster was one, and also I did. I've done quite a few books now. Calculate Like a Grandmaster. I did. Pandemic Sharp was my most recent one.
Yes.
Which was published by Thinkers Publishing.
Oh, that one I do not have. Yes. Guys, you know what I'll do? I'll put a link in the description below of all of these books that we mentioned here. So that way, if you guys like it, you can check it out and buy them. So no, I guess what I was trying to say is what I like about, obviously, the selection of the material, like the games you choose are very interesting, but also, and I think this is important for amateur players, is the description of the different thought processes and things like that. Like I said, the Sharp Middlegames, it was complex, but like from what you're saying, it kind of, that's the way it has to be if you're going to play chess at that level. Is that what you're saying?
Well, yeah, obviously there's some, I mean, to be honest with you, Sharp Middlegames 2 probably explain a bit more easily, more easier for the reader. And but obviously there are very complicated games in there. And I say on the video, don't worry if you get it wrong. I try to explain the ideas. You know, really chess is like an ideas game. The more ideas you see, probably the better player you are.
Right.
You know, so it's not really about whether you get the move right or wrong. It's about increasing your ability to see ideas, using stuff that I've talked about in the course to sort of help you, really give you a guide. I mean, you know, you like to think when you write a course, Brian, that, or a book or whatever, that it actually genuinely helps people to improve. Now, I'm not sure if this will generally help people to improve. I hope that it does. There's certain techniques that I put in there. For example, I talk about something called devil's advocate, which is similar to what they talk about in the Michael Adams book when he talks about falsification. So the idea is you see a candidate move and you try to think about what would happen if your opponent played a worst case scenario, like what if they played the absolute best reply. And that is a good calculation method because you're doing process elimination. Falsification is similar, or it's the same basically. You look at the move as it explains in the book, and you identify 2 or 3 candidate moves, maybe 1 or 2 candidate moves, and that doesn't take very long according to the author. But what does take a little bit more time is trying to refute that candidate move. So you're trying to really break down that candidate move and see if there's anything wrong with it. Now, as you will see in the game that I'll show you later, unfortunately, that thought process broke down at some certain point because I stopped following my own advice.
Yeah, no, well, I'm looking forward to that, and we'll get to that in a couple minutes. I did have a couple follow-up questions based on what you're saying, and this is kind of a theory I've had. Obviously, a lot of there's patterns, learning the patterns in chess, whether that be opening patterns, tactics, strategies, pawn structures, all these things that we learn as chess players. But from what you're telling me, it's also about how we put those together in a thought process or habits. I would say habits of thinking. Is that kind of...
Well, yeah, it's funny, actually. I'm reading a book now because, called The Power of Habit, because I realized I had
Charles Duhigg, that one?
Anger issues. Yeah, exactly. Quite a good book, actually. Quite interesting book. But yeah, and it explains how if people change their behavior slightly, it can have a huge effect. And you could really, obviously use that for a lot of things in life, certainly for chess. I think a lot of bad habits that we build up over time. And understanding why you make mistakes, I think, is very important in chess. I explained actually on the video that it's very important to annotate your games.
Yes.
It's very important to analyze your games. Also, try to evaluate the positions as well. Try to look at positions and say, is white better? Is black better? I mean, I've worked with people recently, and it's amazing how often they don't actually bother to do that simple thing. Firstly, a lot of amateur players don't analyze their games, which I think is a huge mistake. And they certainly don't evaluate them either. So hopefully in the video, it comes across what I'm trying to explain, how it's important to look at yourself and look at why I mean, just to give you an example, a friend of mine called Zoe Varney, you've probably heard of her.
Mm-hmm.
She's fairly active on social media. She recently played in the European individual championships. And I looked at her games. She did very well early on. She drew with a GM. I looked at her games and I could tell that she was getting to positions and she was trying to do stuff too quickly. It was very easy for me to tell that her style was breaking down because she has a tendency to go for active moves. Rather than methodically improving her position, she would look for a very active move when it was too early. So I said to her, look, just try to play good positional moves. You can often outplay people just by outplaying them positionally. You don't necessarily have to go for crazy tactics on every position. And just that simple piece of advice has allowed her to now get over 2,000, and suddenly her results are starting to take off.
Excellent. So this is one of your students. I mean, I'm familiar with her from Twitter and social media, but she's also one of your students.
Well, I sort of help her really from a psychological perspective more than anything, rather than specific chess advice. Because I mean, she's very well prepared. She does a lot of Chessable work. Actually, she does a lot of Chessable courses. So her openings are probably better than mine now. Her openings are really good, but often she'll get positions where, the great positions. And then she'll just have no time left. So I think, she can improve even more, actually, because, again, it's related to psychology. Why doesn't she play a bit quicker? I think it's because of a lack of self-confidence. If you look at someone like Nepo, for example, who's leading candidates, obviously is different. You have the spectrum.
Yep.
But if he has to be careful, it's almost like overconfidence. He gets overconfident, and and he plays too quickly. And like I say, we'll look at this game in a minute, but we see that I played too quickly at one moment. So overconfidence is probably something I suffer from as well.
Definitely, yeah. A couple follow-up questions. By the way, we're recording this on June 27th, right in the middle of the candidates tournament. So if you're watching this at a later point, Nepo is leading right now. Although I think he lost today to. No, he drew. He drew. Yes, with.
But Nakamura lost. I think Nakamura, Brian, to be honest with you, is he's taken on too much with all these YouTube videos afterwards.
Yeah, I mean they're great. I've been watching every one of them. But
they're fantastic. But the thing is, you got to prioritize yourself,
right?
And chances of winning the candidates are going down. If you're streaming now and you're streaming Title Tuesday,
right?
That's great for the audience, but ultimately, I think it's cost him today because he just looked unrecognizable. He looked absolutely exhausted.
Yeah.
So I don't know if there's a rest day tomorrow, but I think he would need a rest day now.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. It's interesting. Well, we talk about psychology, right? I mean, it's something where he's probably being true to his brand, maybe, but in a way, he's and the fans love it. I mean, I'm a big fan of Nakamura, and it sounds like it might be affecting him on the board, even in subtle ways. Obviously, he's playing very tough opponents too, and they have something to say about that. But that's why you need to be on your top. You need to be at physically and mentally. So before we get into the game specifically, I mean, now that pandemic, I mean, I know it's still around, but are you playing more over the board, or what's going on?
Yeah, I think generally I don't like flying, Brian, which is a problem for me. So when I film these Chessable courses, actually it was a long slog because if I don't like flying from Newcastle is about an hour and a half to Amsterdam probably, or so like an hour or whatever. It doesn't take very long. But I got a train down to London. I stayed overnight in a hotel in London, which was a terrible hotel. I won't name the hotel. It was an awful hotel. It was basically, unless you pay £200 a night, you're not going to get a decent hotel in London. Then I went to Amsterdam via the Eurostar, and then from Eurostar, from Amsterdam, I got another train, which took about 2 hours. This town called Jure in the Netherlands, beautiful town, all these boats and everything, fantastic, almost like a picture postcard, perfect. If you want to go on a holiday, that's like the ideal place to go. So very quiet. I quite like it when it's quiet, not so many people. I did go to Amsterdam after that, and a lot more people, a bit more stressful, really. But I'd like to play more tournaments. I mean, I've got the British Championships coming up in August, but I haven't really got much coming up before then.
I see.
Could play a tournament in Belgium, but that's not FIDE rated. It's Ghent. It's not even FIDE rated, so that's a bit of a bummer. I've got a tournament in about 2 weeks as well. It's just a short FIDE rated tournament. But I'd love to play more. I'd love to be, one of the things I'd like is for there to be a recognised circuit where you could just play constantly, non-stop. Unfortunately, in chess, there is no such thing unless you're like one of the top players can play a lot, but even for them, there's not that many tournaments really.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. So most of your play has been online, like overall, you would say?
Well, I don't really. I mean, I play Blitz online, but I don't play proper online tournaments.
So you don't. So you mainly play.
Sorry.
No. So you mainly played just Blitz online. Okay. Well, how is your like for example for like you said, the British Championship is going to be coming up in a couple months. Are you doing any special preparation for that, or just your usual studies? And
yeah. I'm watching some Netflix, Amazon Prime. I'm streaming all the latest shows. I mean, I have actually been working a bit harder. Like, this is why my results lately. I think that's why my result. I did have one very good tournament where I started with 6 wins out of 6. So that was really good.
That's awesome.
That was a real confidence booster. But as some of the team chess lately I played hasn't been great, and I think I struggle with those, because what I tend to find is when I play at a tournament, it takes me a few rounds to warm up, and then I'm like into it, and then I play really well.
Okay.
But in team chess, you just throw it in, you get 2 games, that's it. I seem to struggle with that format for some reason. But I wouldn't make excuses. But yeah, I want to work harder, because I feel that what I've come to realize, Brian, is that if I want to improve or even stay at the same level, I've got to work harder than I have been. Over the last 10 or 15 years, I've not worked hard enough on my chess. And people probably assume that GMs are constantly working on their chess. The top guys obviously do a huge amount of work. That's why their openings are so good and everything. You know, weaker GMs tend to often be quite talented but lazy people.
Is that how you would classify Is that how you would classify yourself?
As a weaker GM, probably, yeah. I mean, relatively speaking, obviously, compared to
talented but lazy, or
talented but lazy. Yeah, I mean, my blitz ratings online are reasonably high. I'm over 2,800 on lead chess. I'm well over 2,700 on chess.com. So I'm not a terrible player, but yeah, to get to a higher level, it's going to be difficult. You know, I mean, I'm not playing enough tournaments. I'd have to get over the fear of flying, and therefore playing stronger opens in Europe and everything. You're not going to be able to do it just playing in England. It's impossible. And also, there's so many underrated players now as well. There's so many sort of, 2,200 sort of 14, 15-year-olds who are really, really good and underrated. It's hard, yeah.
It's interesting. I saw, I think it was in the United States, they had a special tournament, maybe it was in Europe, where only you had to be at least 21 to enter, no matter what your rating was. And I think I could see that being very attractive, because, when for me, around 1850, and then I play a 1300 13-year-old. But I don't know if this 13-year-old is really 1300 or is he really 2500, but he just hasn't played enough yet to.
Actually, that tournament was in North Carolina, because a student, one of the few students I actually have, I've only got about 1 or 2 students. He lives in North Carolina. He's originally from the UK, and he said he's played in this tournament.
Oh, okay.
And it was, under 21s barred. Now, whether it was a licensing thing, or I think the organisers just got fed up with all these underrated juniors scaring off the.
Yeah, and it's great. Obviously, we need young players. Actually, I played a young. He's 13-year-old. He just broke national master here.
Wow.
And I interviewed when he went over one of his games, just like we're going to do here. And at the time he was under 2,200, but then by the time I posted the video, he had played in a couple events and broke through there. So they really can move up fast, but there's still hope for the rest of us, right? I mean, luckily, obviously you're already at a much higher level, but
this comes back to what I was saying, actually, because when you're younger, that's why I wouldn't be too harsh on junior players, because I think they're the life and blood of chess, really.
Of course.
People coming through. And you have to have a lot of motivation to play chess well. When you're younger, you have all that motivation. I know when I was sort of like a teenager, or when I was, early 20s or whatever, it's probably when I played my best chess, because I was like really motivated and really up for it. And I wish I'd kicked on, really, and I didn't really kick on. And it's only recently I've started to realise, actually, I've been in a kind of a fugue state since then. I haven't really worked enough on my openings. I haven't had that fascination with chess. I stopped reading chess books, studying chess enough. So now I'm kind of trying to force myself to adopt a more rigorous work ethic. And when you watch these, you go on Twitter and you see all these people like adult improvers.
Yep.
And they've all got their work plan set out. I think, well, I don't work that hard, and I'm a GM. So what could I achieve if I worked as hard as these guys who are struggling to improve? And I'm already at a high level. If I worked that bit harder, my result. And it was kind of reflected recently, because I know I played badly last weekend, but when I played that tournament, I won my first 6 games. So I don't think I would have done that if I hadn't worked that hard.
Right.
So yeah, I think, one of the things in chess, which is very, very important in anything really, you have to work hard. Otherwise you will not achieve the results that you want to achieve.
Right, or at least you'll be capped at a certain point, right? Like you're saying with maybe with the weaker GMs who maybe have more potential, but because they haven't put in more work, they're
Exactly. I mean, I read an interview with a guy called Vladimir Kopian who once played a match for the World Championship in the FIDE. It was a FIDE World Championship. He lost to Khalifman. It's where they had one of his knockouts. I think it was in Las Vegas.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you remember the years where they had a knockout.
Oh yeah, I remember. I was one of those ones who was like, "That's not the real World Championship." Yeah.
Yeah, and Gary Kasparov was like, "Oh, they're all chess tourists and all this."
Yeah, exactly. Insulted a lot of people.
Yeah, charming as always,
Yeah.
But the thing is, he said in an interview that when he was younger, he was obviously identified by Botvinnik as being incredibly talented, as just as talented as Gary Kasparov. But although Kopian was a very strong player, he didn't quite get through to the absolute top level. One of the things he said was the reason he didn't was because he didn't quite work as hard on the opening phase as like the really top guys. So they were spending sort of 5-6 hours a day, really getting the openings down pat, really going really deep into the openings. Whereas he knew his openings very well, of course, but not quite at that level. And I think that really, that brought it home to me that actually, a lot of it is opening work, actually. If you want to get to the higher level, you look at those guys, those candidates.
Right.
They're just very, very good full stop, but their openings are fantastic, I mean, look at Nepo with his supercomputer. It's insane, right? The level of his preparation.
Oh, I mean, he's blowing some of these guys out of the water. I mean, this last couple weeks.
The interesting thing, Brian, is I think that there will not be a World Championship match between Carlsen and Nepo. Again, I don't think Carlsen will play Nepo. I think he'll just think...
He's talked about that, but I don't know how much of that is kind of the hype, sort of like... I don't know, do you think just because it won't be interesting to him, to Magnus?
I think it's genuine. I think it's genuine. He doesn't want to play. And he just doesn't enjoy the whole preparing and spending... weeks and months playing the same player. Also, there's the element, the Russian question, because Peter Heine Nielsen was Carlsen's coach. He's very kind of almost anti-Russian, certainly Russian politicians. And although Nepo doesn't play under the Russian flag, he's still identified with Russia. So you could see that as a kind of a Magnus endorsement of Russia if he was playing that match. I think there's almost certainly would not play that match against Nepo. So if Nepo wins, you'll have a situation where if Carlsen doesn't play, Nepo would have played the second place. So whoever finished second in that tournament, which is currently up in the air, but I think Caruana's got a 1 point lead.
I think Caruana's still a little bit ahead, yeah.
He's a little bit ahead, but he's been a bit shaky last couple of rounds. He lost against Nakamura, and he was winning today. Well, he was better today, but he messed it up. So therefore, I still think that's up for grabs. I actually think Firouzja will finish very strong. We saw in the World Blitz that he finished very strong in that. And I actually said before his game today that I think he's going to win, and he did win. And he's young, so he's got all this energy. You see, Nakamura's getting very tired today. He's overdoing it with all the streaming and YouTube and everything.
Yeah.
I think Firouzja...
I've been really enjoying it. I've been watching Nakamura's... Hikaru's his videos after you can tell he puts it in there, and he's very you know what, you got to give the guy credit. He said he loves what he does, and he's living his I
think he genuinely enjoys streaming,
but I guess from a strategy from a strategy,
he genuinely enjoys showing off to people, and also he's partly is growing the game. He's bringing people into chess. He's increasing their enjoyment of chess.
Oh yeah.
So I think
it's a good thing. But it probably isn't helping his chances practically speaking.
No, I think somebody in his team needs to say, look, certainly chess.com as well have a responsibility. Today they were bragging about it on Twitter. Oh, Hikaru's going to stream Title Tuesday on the rest day. I mean, come on, you're actually sabotaging his chances.
Right.
Just say to him that you're not going to stream. You're going to focus on the chess. You're going to have a day off. I think he's a bit of a machine. We see that when he's on Twitch. He's streaming for 7-8 hours a day.
Right.
He's a bit of a machine. But I think you got to have somebody who's saying to you, look, just chill. It's better just to have like a little bit of perspective.
Yeah.
You're just going to hit the wall in the last
almost have
3 or 4 rounds.
Like a manager who doesn't instruct you on the chess matters, like on the chess theory, but will kind of tell you
exactly.
like a psychologist,
like
kind of manage.
I'd say go for a walk in the park or just chill out, just read a book or something.
Yeah.
You know, no chess today. You know, you can't really do that in the candidates, but you could. Don't stream. Do you know what I mean? Don't spend hours preparing all this material. Just chill out. So I think, that is a danger with Hikaru. That maybe he kind of felt like that was an important loss today. Either way, it's such a shame because it's such a brilliant win against Caruana.
Oh, I know.
In my opinion, it was the best game in the tournament. And then to really come back, but it shows that Radjabov is still a threat. You know, even people like Radjabov not having a good tournament. He's still 27-50 player and you're black, right? I mean, can you imagine playing a 27-50 player and you're black? He's obviously a very, very strong player.
Right.
He got a wild card into the candidates, so therefore he's got a point to prove. Good for him that he's now won a game. So it's still up for grabs, I think.
Well, that will be interesting. Well, maybe we'll have to meet again afterwards to talk about the World Championship and stuff like that. But
maybe after the candidates, we'll do a recap on the candidates.
Yeah, we can look at a few of the best games. Great. Okay. Well, you know what we should do now, because we should. I think we've been referencing this game you're going to show us. So why don't you want to give us a little background around it and tell us? Tell us a little more about it.
Well, it's an interesting game. So I was white in this game. The previous day, I didn't play particularly great, but I played against a 2190 guy called Stepan, who's Armenian background but lives in the UK. Henrik Stepanian, and he played really well for a 2190. I was black. I played a Grunfeld. I mean, the game was like super accurate. You look on Chessable, it's like an all blue game. Normally, when you play, we're playing at a lower level, you get a few red moves, right? Unfortunately, in this game, there was a big red move right at the end. So it was a pretty blue game again up till the final mistake. So I'm going to try and explain why I made the mistake that I did.
Okay.
So I was playing John Cooper, who's from Wales, who's an international master. Despite being 22-40, he's obviously gone down a lot in recent years because he's got older. He's still, even an international master, is still, he's still dangerous. He's an international master, right?
Of course, yeah. You can't underestimate him.
You can't, but unfortunately I did, as we'll see. So basically, I was playing for Blackford, who originally were called Blackford Russia, but we changed our name not to offend anyone. So we're now called Blackford.
This was a team event. This was a team event?
Yeah, this is the Four Nations Chess League, which takes place in England.
Okay.
Yeah. So you have England, Wales, Scotland, Northern Ireland represented. But in general, it's just teams from England. The team that won it was a team called Manx Liberty. It had Shirov on board one, who won all 8 games, an amazing performance.
Wow.
Just outclassed the opposition. And so we were in relegation trouble. If we lost this game, if we lost this match, we felt that we would probably get relegated. So we needed to get promoted. So all the teams got clubbed together in one big group from the first and second division. And the idea was only 12 teams would stay in the first division. So we were kind of really on the borderline. I didn't have very good results individually earlier in the season. So anyway, I was playing this guy, John Cooper. And before the game, I prepared to play the C3 Sicilian, but he made me play G6. He surprised me by playing E6, Brian. And I thought about maybe I should go D4. And this is really what I should have done. Just got into an open Sicilian. I played against an older guy. No disrespect to him. Sharp position. I'm probably going to win. You know?
Okay, so that's what you were thinking at the time.
Yeah, I don't think his theory is probably his theory is not that good. If I prepared this well, I probably would have won the game, I reckon. But I decided to stick with my plan. I'm going to play the
okay.
C3 Sicilian. I don't think the C3 Sicilian really suits me. It's a bit more positional. He played all the correct moves actually. So he took it. I think the bishop takes is a move, but I took with a knight.
Mhm.
And I think he played all the correct moves. He went rook e8. This is where we were talking about a lack of knowledge. I played a move here, which actually turns out is probably a novelty. And I played the move bishop g5. Now, the reason I played bishop g5 is when he went rook e8, I suddenly felt a little bit uncomfortable. I thought, what is he actually threatening to take on e3? Not necessarily a winning threat, but I just thought he would get lots of compensation for the exchange if he takes on e3.
Mm-hmm.
So apparently the main line is a rook e1. And if he takes on e3 here, probably is not giving enough compensation for black. But, I wasn't sure in the game. I was a little bit concerned that maybe black would have some dark square compensation.
I see.
So I probably reacted. I did spend some time here, but I eventually played bishop g5, which wasn't a very good move for the main reason that he could take on d4.
Okay.
And that really nullifies the advantage I have. So the advantage I have here is the fact that his pawn is isolated on d5. I use the knight on a d4. I can control in this square. It's a very useful square. I'm effectively got a clamp in the center of the board. By going bishop g5, I'm removing my one advantage.
Right.
So in fact, after bishop f5, the engine already says that black is slightly better here.
Interesting.
Which doesn't surprise me, actually. I think if we look at a position, bishop on e2 is slightly awkward. I'd like to go queen b3, but that's going to drop the bishop on e2, so I can't really play queen b3. I'd like to play queen b3, like attacking b7, d5.
Right.
So I went for rook c1. I think this is where he made a slight error. He probably didn't need to play the move that he played, but it's not a bad move at all. I think he probably should have played h6. I was even concerned about him playing g5 and possibly taking this guy off. Maybe with a bishop on f5, I would now take the f pawn. But just to show you that h takes, queen b6, I think black is doing quite well. And I actually talk about this in the course, Brian. I talk about how you push your pawns in front of the king and how perceptions of those kind of positions have changed.
Right. Because usually you would say that would be bad, right? Or the traditional.
Yeah, back in the day, exactly. Back in the day, we used to think that you couldn't push your pawns in front of the king because people were a lot more dogmatic. Now we use engines a lot, certainly the top players. And engines are often pushing their pawns in front of the king because they don't see a mate, right? And where there's a lot of human players, we're kind of limited in the sense that we fear ghosts. We're like, I'm worried that I don't want to weaken my position. I think this is another thing that amateur players struggle with, which I tried to talk about in the course, is that they tend to generalize too much. There's not enough specific calculation.
Right.
And it was interesting that Vladimir Kramnik was talking about the candidates, and he said that he understands now that all the top players, all they do now is calculate. He said there were certain positions where the general move, the general obvious move was screaming to be played. But then you'll see this move that looks very weird, but it's kind of maybe not that weird because it's like we're living in this kind of computer era now.
Right.
And stuff like that to sort of talk about on the course, really, why perceptions have changed about certain positions like this. You know, back in the day, you might be afraid to go h6 and g5 because you think you're weakening your king side.
Yeah.
Well, now we deal with specifics, so we think, well, actually, this is okay. Well, going back to the game, went rook e6. So I did think, well, actually, this guy's a bit of a hacker. Maybe he wants to bring this rook, obviously not at the moment, but once that knight moves or if the knight gets traded, that rook might come across and start attacking. And clearly, the bishop is attacking h2 as well. So I've always got to look out for moves like bishop takes h2. Bishop takes h2 doesn't work here because here he's dropping a piece. But the fact that I even have to calculate that variation is a little bit scary. It shows that I've obviously gone slightly wrong to allow this position at all.
I see.
So here we went queen b6. This is where, again, I made a slight miscalculation. And I think if I'd have been a bit sharper and a bit more informed, I probably would have played the move queen b3 here. But I was concerned about the move queen takes d4. I didn't see a refutation of that. I think it was a little bit rusty. Queen b7, rook b8. And here, for some stupid reason, I forgot I could simply go rook to c8 check.
Ah. So you stopped after rook b8 in your calculations and said, oh, this is no good? Is that how you...
Yeah, pretty much. I think I was just really rusty. It is looking back, you know, this weekend I was really kind of rusty, actually. I hadn't really played much.
Right.
You know, other than blitz, which is not necessarily perfect training for classical chess. And, well, here it's not the end of the story because he can still go rook e8 and he's fine.
Right.
But I'll get out of trouble, right? So... yeah, and I talk about that, and of course, I talk about calculation, why it's important to not be superficial, why you need to look that a little bit further. As we'll see later on, I also made other mistakes in calculation. So I went knight b3, which wasn't a terrible move in fairness. But it allows him to sort out his problem with his knight. He goes knight e4. So now... actually, this is something I explain in the course. I talk about a game where my opponent plays a move knight to e4 in the middle game. And I'm talking about us playing in the tournament in Ghent, in Belgium. I don't know if anyone's ever been to Ghent. And there's a tournament that takes place in Ghent in the middle of the summer. And a lot of British players go over for that. There's like a drinking sort of culture over there, so people can have a beer, sit around the table looking at their games, or hang out in the cafes. Very nice kind of atmosphere.
Sounds like fun.
And I was playing, yeah, it's a lot of fun, right? Typical European kind of tournament. I was playing this Belgian guy who's quite a strong player. I think this was on a Saturday night, so this was either like the penultimate round or maybe round 7 of a 9-round tournament. And I knew I kind of needed to win or at least draw because you need to get such a high score in the tournament to win a prize. I think I'd already dropped maybe a couple of draws. So I think I ended up with 7 out of 9, but the winning score was 7.5. So he went, knight e4 in the middle game. And it had a really profound effect on me, this idea of knight e4 and how it controls the entire board. It just gives space advantage. So I try to talk about that in the course.
So that game you're talking about is in the Sharp Middlegames 2 course.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. And hopefully that's an instructive game, but this is kind of similar. The knight on e4 turned out to be a very useful piece. So he went rook to e8. I played this move knight c5, so I'm attacking the rook. He played rook e7. And... yeah, I had a few choices here, Brian, but I wasn't sure what to play. The problem was I thought if I take on e4, he takes back with a pawn. I don't really have any great moves here for white. You know, I can go something like queen h5. He just goes bishop g6. So what? Queen d5 didn't look very convincing to me. I thought if nothing else, he could probably even just take on c5, but he'll probably retain that bishop. I don't really have any specific threats. And later on, of course, there's also the danger that he may somehow manage to push these pawns like f5, f4. So if he moves the king away, for example, he could start to play f5, f4. and maybe gain an attack on the king's side. So I wasn't sure about that. Of course, he could also take back the bishop, but I think he should take back the pawn. So with queen b3, it's actually a miscalculation. I was a little bit lucky here because I thought he should take on b3. I thought he would take on b3. I was intending to take back the knight. But what I missed when I went queen b3, again, I think it shows my calculation was a little bit rusty. And what I missed was that he could take on c5. And I suddenly realised, so this is the move he...
Yeah.
That when he take back, he takes here, and now he's got a clever trick, which actually gives him the advantage, I think. Could be wrong. I don't know if
is it D4?
You see it, Brian.
D4?
That's the move I was afraid of, yeah, because D4...
After he takes, then the D2 square is open. Is that what the idea?
Exactly, knight D2, and very well spotted. Rook D1, I don't think he even takes an F3. I think he goes knight D3, and I've got a big problem. Because if I move the rook up, well, I've got a back rank issue. In fact, that should have alerted me to what was going, because I saw that variation with a back rank. That should have alerted me to what happened later on in the game.
Right.
But clearly it didn't.
I feel good that I figured that out.
Yeah, exactly. So I was lucky because I missed bishop c5, and clearly if I take the pawn, I'm probably almost struggling to hold, right?
Right.
Maybe I can go bishop f4 in that variation instead of taking on d4, and it might be okay.
Right.
Equally, I could probably have just offered a draw. Like when he goes d4, go bishop f4, offer a draw, realise I might be slightly worse because he's still got this d pawn. I think he would have accepted because of the fact that, I mean, it would have been a good result for his team. So and he was a much better player than me. So I think he probably would have accepted. Actually, offered in the 4NCL on the Sunday, Brian, I've often had quick draws because it's a long journey back for me. And I found if I don't go early, then I can't get back. So I end up spending 7 hours trying to get back. So unfortunately, I've had to have quick draws on occasion, but I'm trying to avoid that now. So now I'm getting lifts up to like York and then carried on from there. But yeah, go back to the game. So he missed my next move. When he took on c5, he missed my next move, queen d5. So clearly I hadn't seen that when I went queen b3. So this was showing that my calculation wasn't quite right. I was being a bit lazy. I wasn't really calculating. He now came up with a good sequence. So he took on d4, which was a good move. Again, if I go for this queen d4, he can trade and go for this knight d2. So I have to take the bishop. He went queen g6. And again, this is where I should have really spent some time. So I realized that rook e1 was an interesting move here. Rook e1.
Yeah. Quick question, Danny. Are you in any time trouble at any point at this point or not really?
Oh no, I've got loads of time. I'm in blitz mode on chess.com. I'm like I've got like 40
so the clock
minutes.
wasn't really the clock wasn't the factor here.
Oh no, not I mean, but almost the opposite. I wasn't taking enough time.
Yeah. Okay.
You know, and yeah, I think that's the problem for me is that my time management isn't great because I'm like, actually, I should be spending more time in certain situations. You can go 92, but I take on e7, and he's in trouble because after knight f3, I don't take back because then I don't have the back ranker. But I just go king h1, and he's in big trouble because if he takes, then I've got my own back ranker. So the back rank issues we saw in the game became very relevant. But the problem is after rook e1, I think he just plays a move like h5. And I really don't have anything at all special here as white. But I could still play on. Also, I was slightly concerned that he would have moves like rook d7. But thinking about it now, I could just go queen b5 and I'm fine. So I think this is already a sign that I was being a bit lazy, and that's a danger sign. I didn't really bother to really get. I should really have got stuck into rook e1, Brian, and should have really thought about rook e1 a bit because it was a critical situation where I needed to play very accurately over the next few moves to have any chance of gaining any advantage. The computer just says it's equal at this point. But at the same time, it's still an equal where you could, in theory, outplay the guy. He was getting short of time.
Yeah, I was going to say there's a lot of tension on the board still, even if it's equal.
Exactly. There's a lot of there's a lot of stuff going on. There's a little bit of imbalance. So, yes. I mean, he will probably find a way to equalise the game and make a draw, but it's not guaranteed. So I should have at least thought a bit. That's really what your ideal state wants to be as a chess player, in my opinion, Brian, is that you're sitting there and I'm kind of working another book at the moment and constantly writing chess books,
Oh, we're glad for it. Yeah.
Well, I'm going to make it my final book because I'm fed up with writing chess books, to be honest with you.
Okay.
I'm worried that this will just be, all I'm famous for is writing chess books, and I feel like I'm a genius. I'm a genius who deserves a wider audience. I need to be known to the general public, and just being known as a chess author, I don't like that. So
we'll see what we can do here. We'll see what we can do.
Exactly, but yeah, But that's what I was trying to say. Like, you have that level of fascination. If you want to be a good chess player, well, I've come to realize recently, and if you're kind of lazy and you can't be bothered to look at the position and you just play any old move that comes into your head, you're going to play superficially and you're not going to play at a high level. And I should have spent a while being fascinated by rook e1. Instead, I ended up being fascinated by bishop e3. I thought this was a good control move, but I didn't go deeply enough. And I kind of underestimated his next move, which I could have taken on a7 maybe, but I didn't like bishop takes a7. I just thought it was too greedy. It was a bad idea. I don't know what the engine says here. It doesn't like bishop takes a7. I went bishop. Well, the problem with bishop a7, he goes knight g5 like he did in the game. And then I got a bit of a problem. He's starting to create counterplay on the king side. With moves like knight takes f3 followed by bishop e4 or just bishop e4 immediately. It just feels a little bit shaky for bishop e6 might be a threat because where does the queen go? The bishop e6 it might be an immediate threat because if the queen goes to b5, he's got knight takes f3.
That's true.
I went bishop e3 and he played again a very accurate move. He played a pretty good game actually. He went knight g5 was a good move, and so we're coming up to my terrible blunder, and this is where I should have bowed out and just made a draw. Well, I mean what I played was fine, but he does have some possible threats here. But yeah, I could, for example, maybe I could just play a move like rook d1. He's going to take, and I have to be careful. Actually, this isn't a draw because he's got bishop g4.
Right.
I'm trying to create a scenario where I just trade the queens. There's probably several ways of doing that. But what I did was also fine. I took on g5, but this is where I made a terrible mistake because I failed to open it. He's got a very strong threat here, and I think my following move. Is terrible blunder, and I'll explain why I think I blundered.
Okay.
So what I probably should have played was a move like rook c5, g6, and then I looked at queen d4, and I thought this would be ideal for white if it weren't for the move rook e1, which seems to be a little bit annoying. I don't really like the idea that he's coming into e1. So. Although, to be honest, even when I say ideal, objectively, the position is just equal. So instead, I played the move queen d4. And as soon as I went queen d4, I noticed he reacted to my move as if...
So you didn't even see what he was going to play, huh?
As soon as he reacted, then I saw, oh, God, it's over.
No.
He kind of looked at me as if, what have you done? And I suddenly realized, oh, my God, what have I done? What have I done?
We'll let the viewers try to figure out what Black played next. So pause the videos Okay, Danny, we can take a look.
The sheer of getting 8 out of 8 of almost perfect chess, and then there's me blundering my game away with a terrible move, Queen D4. So yeah, he played Queen C1, and I resigned the game because I've lost a whole rook. If I recaptured a rook, he has a rook E1 check.
The weak back rank, which, like you said, you had seen that possibility in a previous variation. But
yeah, exactly. Well, okay. So what is annoying about this most of all, Brian, is the fact that I'm a GM. I'm very well capable of seeing simple tactics like this.
Oh, absolutely.
So it's very frustrating because you're getting results that you shouldn't be getting. Now, I wouldn't have lost this game. Okay, maybe I would have drawn this game if I hadn't played Queen D4, but I don't think I would have lost the game if I hadn't gone Queen D4. So I'll explain why I think I played Queen D4. Well, firstly, I think it was due to a lack of objectivity. I was annoyed the fact that the game was probably equal. I felt like, I was worried that I was going to drop another draw and drop rating points. So I was kind of losing objectivity in that sense. Also, it's a quiet position. And one of the things I've noticed actually in my chess games, certainly over recent years, is I have a tendency to blunder in quiet positions where there's not much going on. So at some point, my calculation switches off and I just play moves because I think, I'm not basically concerned about what they're going to do. But also, I think it relates to what I was saying about devil's advocate or falsification, in the sense that your ideal state of mind when you, and I'll talk about this in the course again, talking about calculation. I think calculation is a fundamental thing in chess. We have to do calculation correctly. Otherwise, we're not going to get good results. I'll talk about how you need to play a move and think concretely about what your opponent is going to do in response to that. When I'm in a good frame of mind, when I'm thinking correctly, that is what I do. When I'm in a lazy frame of mind, when I'm in a superficial frame of mind because I'm thinking about the result or I'm getting ahead of myself or I'm not using enough time, then I'll play a move like Queen D4 because I'm not thinking about how he's going to reply to Queen D4. I went Queen D4 and I thought, well, he might go B. I think I looked at the move B6 and then I was going to go H4. This was my intention. And and then I thought I got a good position. So I saw one variation that he goes here. I go here. And I'm starting to press a little bit.
Right.
He might have to play a move like F6 or allow me to the 7th rank or something. So I saw this variation, but I didn't do the falsification method, which talks about in the Michael Adams book, where I try to refute my own move. If I did the falsification method, then I wouldn't have gone Queen D4 because I would have very quickly refuted to Queen D4, loses to Queen takes C1.
Right.
So I think there's a few elements in there that they're interesting. Recently I was reading this book by Krogius. I don't know if you've heard of it, by Nikolai Krogius, called Psychology in Chess.
I've heard of the book. I've never read it.
I've actually met Krogius because he was a coach to Irina Krush during the tournament in Oakham. Oh, sorry, not in Oakham, in Leek in Staffordshire, and also in London as well. He turned up. And he complained about me. Actually, he said I was like a really rude guy. I didn't hold the door open for her. And well, he's an old-fashioned Russian guy. He obviously died quite a few years ago. There was also a famous anecdote with him in the where Garry Kasparov rang him up, and he was talking about the possible qualification for the candidates to play Karpov. And Krogius said, he said, can I get some support? And Krogius said, we've already got one world champion. We don't need another, to Kasparov. Oh. So that was a famous quote by Krogius. But he also wrote this
with
book.
Like Spassky or something, or one of those guys?
Yeah, he was quite a strong player in his own right. But he wrote a few books. But I think the most famous one was Psychology of Chess.
Okay, yeah. I'll put a link down to that too, so people can check that. So what do you think of that book? Is that a good book?
Well, it talks about stuff like this, quite detail. Why we make mistakes that we do. I think there's probably, it's probably time for an update, really. So maybe I could write a similar kind of book.
Yeah, maybe that could be another project for you. But like if you continue to decide to not.
Yeah. Well, this is probably. I mean, I haven't really decided what the book is going to be about, so it could just be psychology too. But the thing is, he talks about this. Why people make mistakes, and sometimes very strong players will make mistakes which you can't understand why they would make such mistakes.
Right.
But due to specific psychological factors, like for example here, I've lost my objectivity. I've stopped calculating properly, and therefore I played Queen D4, forgetting that he has Queen C1. As soon as he goes Queen C1, of course, I feel incredibly embarrassed that I've made such a passive error. It's not just losing; it's losing in the way that I've lost. It's very embarrassing. But at the end of the day, I know I'm capable of better. So I don't want to spend too long thinking about this game, but I've just thought it's worth showing people. So I think that I'm like a Krogius for the modern generation, but one who does a lot of singing and impressions as well,
Yeah.
He's got more of a sense of humor.
Yeah. Well, this is great. I really appreciate you. When you first showed me this game, and I noticed that you lost, I was interested in how you were going to discuss that, because people always want to show especially if they're going to be on YouTube or whatever, they want to show really good games. So maybe maybe next time you come around, you could show us one of your wins. So
normally I show one of the wins, but I think the reason why I've been a reasonably popular chess author, not like hugely popular, but a lot of people like my writing, is because I talk about the down, sometimes the negative side, and I know people do. They're right to say sometimes you're guilty of negative thinking. I think that's right. But at the same time, sometimes you do have to think. People said to me afterwards, don't beat yourself up for this mistake.
Yeah.
I will beat myself up. They're right, but I will beat myself up at the same time, because I really don't want it to ever happen again.
Yeah.
I don't ever want to have that feeling of pain when I went Queen D4 and he took on C1 ever again. So the only way to avoid that is either to quit chess or to be more disciplined with your thinking process. And avoid stupid blunders.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, at least for people at my level, we can try to do that, but the blunders will still happen, but we can always try to get a little better at it.
A lot of it is your thought process at the board. Have you got discipline over your thought process?
Right.
But like I say, it's one thing to blunder in sharp positions. I don't tend to blunder in sharp positions. I tend to, because I'm more focused, I'm more concentrated.
Right.
When I tend to blunder,
it's a sharp position, and you need to be more accurate.
Exactly.
I see. So,
but a situation like this, where it's actually there's not much going on, I'm much more likely to blunder because my guard is down. You don't think there's any tactics. You don't think there's a queen takes C1 here. It's a bit of a hidden tactic. Yeah. It's shocking, but it's understandable. So I think if the viewers could start to think more about why they're making the mistakes that they do and try to psychoanalyze themselves. And if they want to get in contact with me, maybe I could help them as well.
I'll put your Twitter. How about I put your Twitter contact in the down below? And if you guys in the comments, if you want to ask questions, I'm sure Dan would be would be able to answer any questions, or at least I'll pass the questions on to him, and maybe we'll have a follow up episode, depending on how much.
I think I'm quite good, Brian, at understanding why people's weaknesses, and like I said with Zoe, a friend of mine, that I was understood looking at her games why she was going wrong. I saw similar things in her games that I saw in my own games, where she was a little bit impatient. Right. I've often had a problem with patience, and you see, like here, like I'm getting ahead of myself. I've got 40 minutes left. I could have just sat on my hands and
Right.
thought about the position a bit more deeply and really tried to work everything out methodically. But I didn't do that, So, but yeah, I mean, a lot of it I think is getting into the swing of. That's why you got to play a lot as well, Brian. Because if I played more, I think I would have seen that Queen takes C1 was there. But when you're a little bit rusty, you can miss stuff like that,
So it's partly. I mean, there's a lot of factors going on, and we'll wrap it up in a minute. But I mean, practice is one thing, right? And so you got, like you said, you're rusty, and maybe in a way because he was lower rated than you, maybe because he was older, you didn't think you weren't as on alert.
Exactly, and because he was low rated, I was kind of pushing myself to try and win this game at any cost. And I didn't, when you do that, you lose objectivity.
Yeah.
And that's what happened. That was a result of it. Queen takes C1. So I sort of shook his hand. I said, well played. Then I set up some position and I said, I said I should have just gone rook E1. And he said, oh, white's slightly better instead of bishop E3. I said rook E1 was he said white's slightly better. I said, no, I disagree. I think it's equal. The computer agrees with me pretty much. It is equal. It's saying it's equal. So at least I was right about the evaluation of the position. But then he asked me to sign the score sheets, and then I sort of stormed off. So I wasn't. There was an incident at a previous. I seem to have a bad. I was playing Tony Cosman, and it was a GM, and I got a winning position very early on. I was exchange up. He was tempted to resign. It was that bad. I should have really wrapped it up very easy. It was a very simple technical way to win quite early on. I should have done. But again, laziness. I couldn't be. It was slightly sharp, so I couldn't be bothered to calculate variations. So eventually got some long end game where I should have won. Again, I had another chance to win, didn't take it, screwed it up, only drew. And then I was so angry with myself, I walked away from the board. I threw the score sheet on the ground. I ignored his attempts to talk to me, even though I've known him for years and he's like a friend of mine. And then I started stabbing my pen into my leg.
Oh, no.
Which is completely madness, right? And that's just pure anger, just through pure anger. And then in the morning, I had a bath and I noticed there was this horrible red mark on my leg. And I thought, oh my God, I've got skin cancer. Forgetting that I'd actually stabbed my leg the previous day. So, yeah, it means a lot to me, Brian. Like the chess, it means a hell of a lot to me. And people,
I can tell, yeah.
I really want to do well. I've started to realize I'm fed up with my results, and I want to do well. But it's hard as you get older. You have to downsize your expectations in a way because or you have to work harder to get better results. I think
you have to just determine, I think, whether or not the results are worth the hard work, and then.
Well, that's what I say. That's why I'm slightly discouraged by the fact that even though I've been working hard lately, my rating has actually gone down. So hopefully, if I just keep at it, it will start to shift. They do say that when you work hard, it might take a while for it to show. But I see, like online, my results are picked up, like my online ratings are picked up.
Well, you can. So hopefully, you could put your plan up like with the adult improvers. Then you'll be the highest rated adult improver.
I'll be down with the. The chess punks.
Yeah. The chess punks would welcome you, Danny. They'd love it. Put a like on this video if you're a chess punk and you want Danny to join us.
I'll join the chess punks community.
Well, let's wrap this up. This was great. We'll definitely have to do it again. This time we won't. I think it was like 2 years ago when we last talked. So let's make it a little bit sooner. Maybe right after the candidates in a couple weeks. We can.
We'll do a preview of the World Championship.
Just to close up, let's. I'm going to put the links down to his new course, Sharp Middlegames 2. I encourage you to check that out. And is there anything else that you want people to check out, Danny, before we sign off here?
Well, I mean, my book, which came out recently called Pandemic Shark, which is actually quite an entertaining book. I talk about streaming,
Oh
what it's like to
yes,
be a
yes. I will put again. All the links are going to be down below, so check that out. And then I'm going to put uh, Grandmaster Gormally's Twitter handle as well, so you guys can.
Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed that video. If you did, please hit the like button down below. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. It's always a pleasure to chat with stronger players, especially Danny, who I've come to know as a friend. And hope you guys will check out his new course on Chessable, as well as his new book. Again, the links are down below. And I will talk to you guys later. Have a great day.